You are certain of one thing. This moment is real, not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. The air around you feels immediate. The words you are reading seem to unfold in real time. There is a deep, almost unquestioned confidence that the present exists as a thin, sharp edge separating what has happened from what has not yet arrived. We build our lives around this edge. We say, live in the moment. We promise to act now. We regret the past and anticipate the future. But we trust the present as solid ground. That confidence feels natural. It feels undeniable. If someone asked you to prove that the present moment exists, you would probably laugh. What could be more obvious? You are experiencing it. You are inside it. It feels like the most basic fact of existence. But physics has a habit of unsettling what feels obvious. At first glance, time seems simple. Seconds tick forward. Events occur in sequence. Cause precedes effect. We imagine a universal clock quietly measuring the same now for everyone, everywhere. When you look at the sky, you assume that what is happening there is happening now. When you speak to someone across the room, you assume you share the same present. The idea of a common synchronized moment is so deeply embedded in our thinking that we rarely question it. Yet the deeper we look into the structure of the universe, the less stable this shared now becomes. Even before we reach advanced physics, small cracks appear. Light takes time to travel. Sound takes time to move through air. When you see a flash of lightning and then hear thunder, you are witnessing delay. When you look at the moon, you are seeing it as it was a little over a second ago. When you look at the sun, you are seeing it 8 minutes in the past. Already the idea of a perfectly synchronized present begins to blur. But we brush this aside. We tell ourselves that these are small corrections. The present still exists. It is just slightly offset by signal travel time. We imagine that somewhere beneath these delays, there is still a true universal now holding everything together. The problem is that the universe does not provide such a reference point. Our sense of the present depends on simultaneity. Two events happening at the same time define the slice of reality we call now. But what does at the same time actually mean? For centuries it meant whatever the local clock said. Then physics asked a more precise question. If two events occur far apart in space, how do we know they are simultaneous? The answer turned out to be deeply uncomfortable. To determine simultaneity, you must compare clocks. To compare clocks, you must send signals. Those signals travel at finite speed. The act of measuring now already involves delay and perspective. And once you account for motion, observers moving relative to one another will disagree about whether two distant events happened at the same time. What is simultaneous for one observer is not simultaneous for another. This means there is no single universal present stretching across the cosmos. No global slice of now that everyone shares. The present becomes local, dependent on position and motion. The comforting image of a cosmic clock dissolves. And yet inside your own mind, the present feels unified and stable. You feel as though you occupy a single sharp moment, moving steadily forward. That feeling is powerful. It anchors identity. It gives continuity to experience. It allows you to say, this is happening to me now. But if the universe does not privilege a universal present, and if distant observers cannot agree on what is happening simultaneously, then the now you trust so deeply may not be a fundamental feature of reality at all. It may be something else entirely, something constructed, something local, something generated. And if that is true, then the present moment you feel so certain of may not exist in the way you think it does. The idea that there is no universal present does not arise from philosophy. It emerges from measurement. At the heart of modern physics lies a simple but devastating realization. The speed of light is constant for all observers. No matter how fast you move, light does not adjust itself to accommodate your perspective. This single constraint reshapes the structure of time itself. Imagine two lightning strikes hitting opposite ends of a moving train. An observer standing on the platform sees the flashes and concludes they occurred simultaneously. The light from each strike reaches the midpoint at the same instant. For the person on the ground, the events share a present moment. But now consider an observer sitting inside the moving train. Because the train is in motion, that observer is traveling toward one flash and away from the other. The light from the forward strike meets them sooner than the light from the rear strike. Inside the train, the events are no longer simultaneous. One happened before the other. Both observers are correct within their frames of reference. There is no privileged vantage point that decides which perspective is truly now. Simultaneity becomes relative. Events that are simultaneous for one observer are separated in time for another. This is not a perceptual illusion. It is built into space-time itself. Once motion is involved, there is no single slice of reality that everyone can agree upon as the present. Each observer carries their own temporal ordering of distant events. The universe does not provide a master clock synchronizing every corner of space. Contrast this with everyday intuition. When you think about what is happening in a distant city at this very moment, you imagine a shared now connecting you. You assume that your present and theirs align across distance. Relativity quietly dismantles that assumption. The alignment depends on motion and reference frame. Change your velocity, and you change which events belong to your present. The consequence is subtle but profound. The present is not an objective layer of reality sweeping forward like a moving spotlight. Instead, it is a local construct defined by the geometry of space-time and the state of motion of the observer. Remove the observer, and the concept of a shared now loses meaning. This challenges the idea of time as a flowing river carrying everything uniformly forward. In relativity, time behaves more like a dimension intertwined with space. Events are arranged in a four-dimensional structure called space-time. Within that structure, different observers carve different slices they call present. There is no single universal slice binding all events together. Even causality obeys this structure. Events that can influence one another are constrained by the speed of light. Signals cannot travel instantaneously. The order of cause and effect remains intact within certain boundaries, but simultaneity across large distances becomes flexible. What remains fixed is not the present, but the structure of light cones defining what can affect what. If you accelerate to high speed, your measurements of time change relative to someone at rest. Clocks tick differently. Lengths contract. Temporal ordering shifts. These are not distortions of perception, but consequences of the geometry of space-time. The universe adapts to preserve the constancy of light. So where does that leave the present moment? It leaves it fragmented. Your now is tied to your motion and position. Another observer, moving differently, occupies a different now. There is no cosmic agreement about which distant events are unfolding at this instant. Yet your experience does not fracture. You do not feel like your present depends on velocity. You do not sense alternative slices of space-time coexisting with yours. Inside your awareness, time feels unified and continuous. Physics, however, offers no support for that unity. It provides structure without flow, geometry without a universal clock. The present as an absolute feature of reality dissolves under examination. What remains is perspective. And if the physical universe refuses to grant us a single shared now, then the stability of the present must come from somewhere else. It must arise not from space-time itself, but from the way we interpret and construct it. If physics removes the universal present from the structure of space-time, the question becomes more intimate. Why does the present feel so immediate inside your own mind? If there is no cosmic now, how does your experience produce one so convincingly? The answer lies not in the universe, but in the nervous system. Your brain does not perceive events at the exact instant they occur. Sensory information arrives in fragments. Light strikes the retina and begins a cascade of neural processing. Sound vibrates the inner ear and travels through auditory pathways. Touch, temperature, and proprioception each follow separate routes toward different regions of the cortex. None of these signals reach awareness at the same time. If consciousness were to display each signal as it arrived, your experience would be chaotic. A flash would precede its sound. A touch might register before you saw your hand move. Instead, the brain integrates these signals over a brief temporal window, smoothing them into a coherent scene. That window spans tens to hundreds of milliseconds, sometimes longer. What you call the present is not an instant. It is a constructed interval. Contrast your intuition with this mechanism. You feel as though you experience a razor-thin slice of time. In reality, your brain collects sensory information across a span and assembles it into a unified percept. The moment you inhabit is already slightly extended, already edited. Neuroscience suggests that perception operates through prediction as much as reception. The brain constantly anticipates what is about to happen and uses incoming data to correct its forecasts. This predictive processing allows you to move fluidly through the world despite neural delays. When you catch a ball, your brain predicts its path before your muscles respond. When you understand speech, you anticipate words before they are fully spoken. This predictive architecture contributes to the illusion of immediacy. By forecasting slightly ahead, the brain compensates for processing delays. The result feels synchronous. But what you experience as now is partly expectation and partly confirmation. Even the sense of temporal order can be manipulated. Experiments have shown that when brief stimuli are presented in rapid succession, the brain can reverse or reorder them to maintain coherence. Under certain conditions, people report experiencing events in a sequence that differs from their actual physical timing. Conscious awareness does not simply mirror chronology, it organizes it. Consider also how attention works. When something unexpected happens, your perception sharpens and time may feel as though it slows. In emergencies, moments stretch. In routine tasks, time compresses. These variations reveal that the subjective present is elastic. It expands and contracts depending on cognitive demand. All of this points toward a startling conclusion. The present moment is not a fundamental feature of reality streaming into your mind. It is a synthesis, constructed by neural systems that prioritize coherence and survival over absolute precision. The brain creates a stable temporal platform so that action, memory, and identity remain aligned. Without this construction, experience would fragment. There would be no continuous self navigating through events. Instead, there would be disjointed flashes without narrative continuity. The present serves as the organizing frame that binds perception into a story. And yet this constructed now feels undeniable. It feels solid, immediate, uniquely real. That feeling is powerful because it is useful. It anchors agency. It allows you to say, I am here. But if both physics and neuroscience suggest that the present is assembled rather than discovered, then the flow of time itself may not belong to the universe. It may belong to the mind. And that possibility pushes the inquiry further, toward a view of reality where past, present, and future coexist in ways far stranger than everyday experience suggests. If relativity denies a universal present and neuroscience reveals that your personal now is constructed, a deeper possibility emerges. What if time does not flow at all? What if the sensation of becoming, of moments arriving and slipping away, is not a property of the universe, but a feature of consciousness moving through a fixed structure? In physics, one interpretation of space-time is often called the block universe. In this view, past, present, and future are not stages unfolding one after another. They are coordinates within a four-dimensional structure. Just as all points on a map exist simultaneously, all events in space-time simply are. Nothing comes into being. Nothing vanishes. Events occupy their positions in the geometry of reality. Contrast this with how time feels. You experience a dynamic progression. The future seems open, the past closed, and the present alive. You remember yesterday, but not tomorrow. You anticipate what has not yet happened. The asymmetry feels fundamental, yet within the block universe that asymmetry does not belong to space-time itself. It belongs to your perspective within it. Imagine a film reel. Every frame exists at once along the strip. The story unfolds only when the projector illuminates one frame after another. The sense of motion arises from sequential exposure. Similarly, in the block universe, events are laid out in space-time. The feeling of flow may arise because consciousness accesses these events in sequence. Relativity supports this picture by treating time as a dimension comparable, though not identical to space. Events are located by coordinates in space-time. There is no distinguished slice labeled the present, embedded in the structure. Different observers carve different slices depending on motion, but none is privileged by the universe itself. This interpretation unsettles intuition. If the future already exists as part of the block, then what becomes of possibility? If the past still exists in space-time, what does it mean for something to be over? The language of becoming, of things happening, loses its literal footing. Instead, events are simply there, ordered along world lines. Yet the block universe does not deny change in the way it first appears to. Change becomes relational rather than absolute. A world line represents the history of an object through space-time. Along that line, different states correspond to different coordinates. What you call growth, decay, motion, or transformation are variations along these lines. The structure contains them all. The illusion of flow may arise because your conscious awareness traces a path through your own world line. Memory provides access to earlier coordinates. Anticipation points toward later ones. The sensation of moving forward in time reflects the asymmetry of memory, not the movement of time itself. Thermodynamics adds another layer. Entropy tends to increase, giving rise to the arrow of time. Broken cups do not spontaneously reassemble. Causes precede effects. This asymmetry aligns with the direction in which memory operates. You remember lower entropy states and move toward higher entropy ones. The arrow you experience may reflect statistical tendencies within the block, not a universal ticking. In this framework, the present moment is not a thin edge sweeping forward. It is the coordinate at which your conscious processes are currently active. Another observer, moving differently, may slice the block in another orientation, defining a different set of events as simultaneous. Neither slice is more real than the other. This perspective does not eliminate experience. It reframes it. The flow of time becomes an emergent feature of consciousness embedded within a static geometry. What feels like becoming may be the mind navigating an already structured landscape. And if the universe does not privilege a flowing present, then the sense of agency and choice we attach to that flow must be reconsidered within this broader structure. If the present moment is not a fundamental feature of the universe, the immediate reaction is discomfort. We organize our lives around the assumption that there is a moving edge called now. We make decisions in it. We experience emotions in it. We anchor identity to it. Remove the present, and it can feel as though meaning itself begins to dissolve. But the absence of a universal present does not eliminate lived experience. It reframes it. In a block universe, your life is not a flickering sequence vanishing into the past. It is a structured world line stretching through space-time. Every conversation, every hesitation, every choice occupies a coordinate. The fact that these events do not move does not make them unreal. It makes them positioned. The feeling of progression arises because your conscious processes access these positions sequentially. Contrast the fear that nothing is happening with what is actually implied. Events still occur relative to one another. Causes still precede effects within light cones. Memory still encodes earlier states. The absence of an objective present does not abolish change. It situates change within geometry rather than flow. From the perspective of agency, this view is subtle. If the future already exists as part of the space-time structure, does that negate choice? Not necessarily. Your decisions are themselves events within the block. The process of deliberation, uncertainty, and action are woven into the fabric of your world line. The sense of openness may reflect limited knowledge rather than ontological indeterminacy. Neuroscience reinforces this reinterpretation. The brain constructs a temporal window, integrating signals and predicting outcomes. The present you feel is assembled to maintain coherence. That assembly is not false in the sense of being meaningless. It is functional. It stabilizes identity. It allows narrative continuity. It permits planning and reflection. Meaning does not require an objective cosmic now. It requires relational structure. You care about what happens next because of how your world line is organized. You regret because memory grants access to earlier segments. You hope because imagination projects forward along probable trajectories. The experience of caring remains intact even if the metaphysical status of the present shifts. In fact, understanding the constructed nature of the present can deepen appreciation for it. The immediacy you feel is a product of intricate coordination between physics and biology. Light travels, signals propagate, neural circuits integrate, and consciousness synthesizes a coherent field. What feels like a thin slice of time is the outcome of layered processes working in harmony. Living without a fundamental present does not mean drifting in abstraction. It means recognizing that the stability you rely on is engineered. The universe provides structure, your mind provides flow. Together they create the lived texture of experience. The present moment then may not exist as an objective boundary sweeping across reality. It exists as a cognitive achievement. It is something generated rather than discovered. And perhaps that realization is not a loss, but a refinement. The world is not rushing past you in an ever-vanishing now. It is structured, extended, and far stranger than intuition first suggests.